and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our chief of police would like to make a brief comment.
Well, I can't hide my smile, and I thought I was going to wear my shoes out waiting for the count, but I want to thank everybody, both here and anybody that's watching, and anybody that took the time to vote today. It's been a long process, not as long as some people may go through, but I want to thank the city of Vergennes for supporting us, and we're going to continue to do our job that we do, and this is a great first start to moving on to our next new dig. So thanks again for all your support. And I gotta go pay for 2 officers' dinner because I told them I would do that. Have a good night, folks.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay. Minutes. The two.
Motion to accept the minutes both of the last meeting and the public meeting.
So we have minutes of April 23rd and May 7th.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any discussion?
Or if you wanted to put the names under the subcommittee, the Kids Against Tobacco Subcommittee. I know that people volunteered at the last meeting. I was one of them. I don't know
Okay.
who else was.
Well, I think it was you and I and Mel offered to help, and so I think it was the three of us.
Yeah.
Was it anybody else?
I thought there was another person.
Ziggy, I think, had her hand up, but you're talking about the kids
You're
as
right.
well?
Yep. I didn't know if that one of those names recorded or not. Doesn't matter.
listed all the kids.
No, I talk about which ones could,
Were in the
part of the
subcommittee.
committee as well, as a subcommittee.
Oh.
And I think that.
Well, we didn't really know because Jay said it depended on sports and kids and so on, so I think
No big deal.
if we go
I'll withdraw.
forward.
That's my comment.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Minutes passed. Warrants are being passed around. That's good. Okay, 7:25. Look at that, 7:26. Friends of the Vergennes Opera House. You're up first.
Hello, I'm Allison Rimmer, and on behalf of the Friends of the Vergennes Opera House, I'm here to update the City Council on the doings and goings-on at the Opera House this quarter, since last we presented in January. I sent out a whole bunch of information in your packets. Some of it I know much too late for you to have had a chance to read and absorb, and I apologize for that. In those packages, you will find our 2014 budget, a very slimmed-down budget, and it does indeed include $10,000 from the city as municipal support, so that is in there as you consider your funding stuff. Other than that, I have fun little facts and figures on the visitors through the Opera House if you want to hear that sort of thing, or not.
One thing, Alice, I just wanted to, there's a profit and loss statement here that says January through December 2012, and I think this is what you're referring to when you're talking about the 2014 budget. Is that the $31,004?
Yes.
Is that's what you're talking
Yes.
about?
Have we not managed to get our fiscal year straight at the time?
Yeah,
Got 12.
I just wanted to, I know we talked about that at the meeting, about whether or not this represented a combination of the first 5 months and the last 7, whatever, and it was agreed that it'd be easier to just talk about this as a 2014 year,
yes.
because 2013 was a moving target for you.
Yep, no, that is exactly right.
Yeah, so that's this profit and loss dated 4/22/13. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
That's in essence their, as I understand it, that's their proposed, if you will, 2014 budget and structure.
Right, moving forward, how will.
And this other format is just the first 4 months of 13.
Right.
Okay.
Yes,
Because one
we
of the
wanted to
things
give
that, one of the reasons why, because when we had the meeting, I got confused about the first 4 months of payroll, and whether or not the payroll was already counted and there
Right.
wasn't more. So the point is that this 2014 does include a position,
Yes.
okay? And I'm curious about the remainder of 2013 relative to position.
Yes. Right now, as folks may know, we are restructuring our staffing format. We had to let go our half-time events manager, and we had to reduce our executive director down to half-time. And so Eileen understandably said that she would resign as of June 1st, so we're working our way through that. The board will take the time through the summer to really look at what our staffing needs are, what's our bare bones, what former staffing really achieves what we needed to do. We haven't gotten that far, so I want to say this is our plan, because we haven't gotten that far. But in my head, starting by September, we should have someone in place to start that work. Where that salary is coming from, that's part of that whole, how do we finish up from where we are now till December 13. And that's part of that whole cash flow problem. If you look, we're under budget in many ways, but then there's just not enough cash flow. So the board has not gotten that far, so I don't want to commit to anything here. But in my mind, in September, we've got somebody in there answering the phones and starting to do stuff.
Anybody have any questions on the board here or not? There's a lot to digest, and we just got some of it today, so.
I apologize.
And that's okay, because we need to deal with it in the budget process anyway. I noticed there's some other supporters of the Opera House here. Would anyone like to speak or make any?
The cheerleaders are in the back.
The cheerleaders are in the back.
Just in case you needed it. And I just have to say one thing. I appreciated the chief was so excited, and for all the right reasons, about the police station move. But for those of us who've been working on the Opera House since '01, I mean, we have to have our own celebration. That's really good news, because for the first time, the ticket booth and possibly the office will not be a police station. So this is thrilling. So,
The mayor's office is gonna be the ticket booth.
this is
As long
so
as you
sure,
can put,
very
as long as there's a shade.
That's
you can put
right,
on,
yeah.
sure.
but it's very good.
That is exciting.
But I'm here just to be supportive of Allison, and particularly the Opera House, and for us to answer any questions with enthusiasm about the upcoming year. This is very timely. I think we're in a sea change period, and I think all of us should look at this very carefully. It's exciting.
We wanted to make sure that folks at Vergennes, and in particular Allison and the board, heard and saw that folks who were involved in the initial restoration of the Opera House support 1,000% everything that the Opera House stands for and the work you're doing. And this situation has caused us to become reinvigorated in a way, to get more involved and to help in this next round of restoration, if you will. It's not so much knocking plaster down and building things again like we did, but it's just another restoration. It has to do with financial and strategic planning, and we have expertise in that too, and Allison knows that we're ready to help, and we look forward to seeing some great stuff.
Great.
It's good to make a change. You do have just some little, I'm sorry, am I cutting off mine?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. This spring, January through April, we've had approximately 3,400 patrons come through the door for various activities. So that's a nice bunch of activity. There was a combination of community-based events, Opera House sponsored or co-sponsored programs, and some private rentals. 8 out of the 9 events that were Opera House community events had ticket prices that were $10 or less, and 2 out of those 9 were free. So again, there's always a broad range of things that are going on there. And of course, many of the things that are going on there are, I'm putting my band on, it's Allison's band, and I want to charge $25 a ticket for you to come see me. So it's not something necessarily the Opera House has set, so people should understand that as well when they think about accessibility of the space. So that is my notes.
Mike, you had a question?
I do, and I'll try to stand up so everybody can see my ugly face. It's kind of a question statement, and I know Mel likes to always take this challenge, and it's not meant as a challenge. One thing, where do we stand on the sprinkler system? Is it up and operational and all paid for back to the city? And the other thing is, please describe so everybody at home can understand why the city chooses to take money out of their funds instead of put this to the voters.
Okay, the sprinkler system project, just to kind of refresh everybody's memory here, the city allocated money towards this project. I think it started out at 15, and then it grew to, I think, 30 or so. I don't remember exactly. It was $30,000 or $35,000 towards the sprinkler system project, which started out estimated at about $75,000, but then at the 11th hour, we had the surprise that it required a fire pump to provide adequate pressure to the balcony and roof structure. And that fire pump added about $25,000 to the project. So the project grew to over $100,000. And I think the fire pump is one of the reasons why the city allocated additional funds up to that $30,000 or $35,000. The city then agreed, because of cash flow problems, by the Opera House, the city agreed to, in essence, front money for the sprinkler system to the tune of $54,500, up to $52,500 that will be reimbursed upon completion of the project from a combination of a grant that the Opera House received towards the project and tax credits towards this project. So that's the funding mechanism. The project is not 100% complete, and the reason the system is complete inside of the building. The problem is that the service line, the 6-inch service line that runs from out in front of Terry's house to the City Hall basement did not pass pressure tests and preliminary pressure tests. And we have a quote to do some actual 200-pound testing to find out more about that, Mike. So that's the problem. It won't pass the 200-pound test, and we just don't know whether or not it's the valve, whether or not it's the pipe. We don't know that, and that test needs to occur. And there's another company that I will be in touch with as an alternative to Alpine, because as I mentioned in various emails, a sprinkler system that's 99% complete is worth of no value to anyone. Okay, so we've got to get that part of the project done, but it's not done. Worst case scenario is if they can't determine, I frankly, Mike, I wish that they would open the valve and water would fly right up out of the driveway that's adjacent to City Hall, so then you could go down and dig that up and put in new pipe from that point to the building. The problem is the pressure test is one of those slow leaks, all right? And so when you put it under pressure, you're not seeing the water surface, and so we don't know where to start. Worst case scenario, that line that was put in 2004, I think that's the year that it was put in, worst case scenario would have to be totally redone. That's worst case scenario. Obviously, we hope that that's not the case. We hope that it's either the valve where it was tied in or something outside of Route 22A. Obviously, what would happen is, if let's say that will use up more of the $52,500 to get it done, but the amount of grant money and tax credit money, assuming there's not some catastrophic thing, but I mean, it's just a water line, it's not it's something that could be estimated as far as cost-wise. But I do see an end of this project, and I do see the $52,500 being returned to us. The question is that if there were no other cost and the project was done and energized, the Opera House would get its grant money, it'd get its tax credit money, and they would actually have $16,000 in their pocket, all right? The problem is that it won't match the test, and we don't know what the remaining costs are. So worst case scenario, that $16,000 that they thought was gonna end up in their lap may be gone. And now the second part of your question was,
Before you get to the second, I have a
okay,
third one,
okay.
and it's probably Allison. Has this impacted the amount of people that you can provide service to in the Opera House?
No, it hasn't, fortunately. The state fire marshal's been very gracious in allowing us to work under waiver of having a fire watch, which you're probably familiar with. So I forget the exact combination, but if there's music and drinking or drinking and music,
And
There's
over
combination.
it's over 100 people drinking and music. You basically are actually acting as a nightclub, and at that point, you have to have a fire watch.
Which is
person.
someone going around every 15 minutes checking that, exits are all clear and nothing is.
And it has to
caught
be
on fire.
somebody that can't be responsible for any other job in the building.
Right.
They can't be taking tickets, they can't be, stage managing,
Right.
that's their only job.
So we've
But-
covered that very well. We haven't had to turn away any weddings or bar mitzvahs or anything else for it.
But I will tell you, Michael, that it is no secret, Allison, that we are under this waiver agreement that is not where they want us to be or we want to be.
No, I don't
All right,
intend,
so
I'm not
don't-
booking
You
it
can't
for
assume
any.
that we could have been on, that we can do this forever. We need to get off that, and we've been reminded of that, on occasion, because it's not a perpetuating.
Correct. It's not the final
Waiver,
answer. You
right.
want a sprinkler system.
What was the other question, Mike?
Does Mary have a little lamp? No, go on. No, just so that everybody at home and in the audience, and the gallery here can understand the decisions of, the board making decisions on passing money out to different clubs rather than putting things like this to the voters like you would cause other organizations to normally do.
I'll take it.
Okay.
I think you have to determine the organization, Mike. We have had historically lots of nonprofits that are countywide that we support, elderly services, there's 15 or 16 of them that go to the vote. There are other organizations, I think, like the Bixby Library, like the Opera House, that probably, I think, are more intimate to the functioning of Vergennes as a city and as a community, that I don't think that we need to have the Bixby Library ask for $20,000 on a vote every year. Doesn't make sense to me. Their budget's gonna change year to year. They need support, and I think that the Opera House is a city-owned building. People restored it privately with $2 million. And frankly, although some people may not use it or like it, it's a city asset that I think we have to maintain, and we have to maintain it by making it usable.
You kind of directed your responses to me, but my questions are coming from citizens that want to know.
Well, I'm speaking to the citizens.
Yeah, okay, so.
That's my attitude,
Okay.
or my answer.
And
Yeah, I think, Mike,
the other part of that, Bill, is you said, let's see if I'm having a senior moment, so bear with me. You said that, I'll think about it, I'll come back to me. Bear with me.
Okay.
I'm so glad that happens to you.
Oh, it does all the time, especially at work.
one of the things, just to augment Bill, they're relative to so-called subsidies, if you will, if that's what you want to call them, or contracts or assessments or whatever. Obviously, before the city owned the Sam Fishman Pool, the city allocated $6,000 a year, and whether it was taxpayer money or from the watershed money, it's really just a matter of which pocket. Point being, it was not grouped in with social service agency funding with voters. So, and that, the way that was done before the city owned the pool is still done, has been still done today. Another is the Vergennes Area Rescue Squad. That contract, if you will, that $10,000 or $11,000 or $12,000, that doesn't go before the voters. That's a line item appropriation. So there's no question that to some people, it might appear to them to be inconsistent. And it may be inconsistent, all right? But in that, like, why does this nonprofit corporation go to the voters versus this nonprofit corporation gets a line item out of the budget, all right? And people may have their own individual reasons on the city council as to, whether or not it should be a general fund thing. And sometimes it's like, is the rescue squad a governmental function? That might be one of the reasons. I'm not trying to put words in people's mouth, but one of the reasons why the Vergennes Rescue Squad comes out of the budget is because it's regarded as a governmental function. One reason why the library is taken out of the general fund is because it's regarded as a governmental function. Whereas some of the agencies that are voted on are not considered municipal governmental functions, and that's why they're over into that category, all right? And that's something that, you know, that the board has to attempt to draw that line, which isn't crystal clear, because everybody has their own definition of what might be a governmental function or not.
Appreciate your answer, and thank you for taking the time.
Allison, are you done?
I think so, unless you have a-
BOH, anyone else have any comments or questions on the Opera House? Okay, we'll move on. Tim Dugan, Public Service Department, Vermont Gas Systems.
Is it Duggan or Dugan?
Duggan, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I wondered about that when I said it. 2 Gs. I bet you have.
Oh, good evening. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. Tim Duggan, I'm an attorney with the Public Service Department, and I'm here about docket number 7970. Perhaps many of you have heard about it in the news. It's the proposal from Vermont Gas Systems to expand their transmission and distribution system south from the Burlington-Williston area down towards Middlebury. As part of that project, they'll be building, they're proposing a addition that will service Vergennes. And so the reason for me coming here tonight is to hear from the council and anyone here as to their ideas about what me and my co-counsel on this case, as public advocates in this case, should be looking at, should be thinking about, and should be advocating to the board. I think Mr. Hawley told me that he passed out this specific statute that I'm here under, never leave home without Title 30 of the statutes. And it's Title 30, Section 218C(d)(7). And it says before we take a position, the department takes a position in a case before the board about new transmission, we are to come to the towns and villages and hear from folks there. And I think that's the legislature's goal of saying that we do our job better as public advocates when we're out of the office and hear the concerns of folks who may or may not be affected by a proposed project like this. And I certainly think that myself, that I always have a lot to gain when I can come out and hear from folks who will be more directly affected by a project. So with that, I'd ask anybody if there's anything in particular with respect to this pipeline that they'd like to discuss, or any questions for me?
If you recall, we had some members of Vermont Gas here a few months ago, and we talked about the lines, we talked about costs or extensions and so on and so forth. At that point, there was some concern about some of the streets not getting distribution lines. And Mel, you met with some Vermont Gas folks. There's in the packet a new map, a proposed distribution network map, which appears to cover just about every street we have in the city now. So I think that would allay any fears that there might be a street or a part of the community that's not going to have natural gas if this project's completed. Mel, do you want to address that at all?
I think, Tim, as you know, I went to the workshop. There was a workshop for interveners, and remember, the city council authorized city attorney Ouimet to file papers to obtain so-called intervener status in this process. I originally didn't think that we needed to do that because I thought that we were a statutory party, but that's not the case. We needed to be an intervener. And I can tell you the main reason why I wanted the city to be an intervener, because, and it's not as though the city has ever been in a fight with Vermont Gas, but I think that myself and other members of the city council were concerned, particularly with the mobile home park on Panton Road, that distribution line did not go beyond UTC. And there was another section of High Street that we think that people just forgot. And then there was a couple other places on the map. So anyway, there was some concerns with the map, and that's why we got intervener status, and that's why I went to the workshop. And as a result of some of my talking at the workshop, I met with Tim Lyons and Brian Gray, I think his name is. And as Bill says, they were very quick. They actually brought a map with some of those changes on it. We talked about some additional changes. For instance, because of the development that is occurring on Hopkins Road, They are extending that distribution line out to Michael Daniels' house, which obviously will pick up that complete 7-lot subdivision across from Country Commons. It even picked up a couple of private streets. I think of Coventry Lane. There's a couple of houses off there. That's a private drive. But that's on the map now, which is good. And if there's one, as I understand it, if there's two people that live, 2 homes at the end of the private road Coventry Lane, and if one of them wants natural gas, that distribution line will go there. So I'm really happy with the map.
Yeah.
And the only area that's not being served that I see on here is Comfort Hill. And I understand why it's not on the map. It's because of we don't have the density nor the load up there to warrant an extension of that
Yeah, this is
line.
just the 2 residences at the end of Comfort Hill. The,
Right, yeah, right, so,
And Meadowbrook.
That may not be a bad
It's not
secondary
covered.
plan.
oh,
because-
well, Meadow, is it not covered? I'll be calling Tim tomorrow.
You know,
Yeah.
that might not be a bad secondary plan to run a line around through there, the way that bank slides on Mcknight Drive. You know how you're changing water lines every so often there. You can, if you had a problem, you can still provide Northland gas.
Those are loop, there's,
There is a loop.
oh,
Yes.
Comfort Hill, no, when I said Comfort Hill,
It's
I
just the
didn't mean
very
the
end.
Comfort Hill. At the intersection of Comfort Hill and High Street,
Okay.
it stopped, so I misspoke, Mike, north of there. But I'll find out about Meadowbrook Lane. The other thing that I brought up, Tim, was for the city to receive some templates relative to what I call license agreements between Vermont Gas and the municipality to, that set forth their rights and responsibilities to do work within our city rights of way. The other thing that I did not bring up is obviously having Vermont Gas in a community. There may very well be some folks in our fire department that come from other municipalities where they had natural gas, but obviously there's some training requirements that come to play there, and likewise, our Public Works Department with the sewer lines, and I mean, there's 3 people in 3 of the 4 in our Public Works Department are members of the fire department, so it's not like you have to have 2 meetings. So those were kind of my immediate concerns, and I feel as if Vermont Gas has been very responsive to us.
To us, yeah.
At this point, really.
any comments from any aldermen, any questions?
Terry,
Whoops.
I didn't see Terry here.
Terry?
Thank you, Mayor Brennan. I'm Terry Mcknight, the Executive Director of the Addison County Community Trust. And we manage and provide affordable housing across the county. And we have a total between apartments and mobile home lots, over 700 units in the county, many of which are kind of in the path. And thank you, Mel, and the city council for looking out, in a sense, for the mobile home park here, which is 73 lots in 3 streets. So it's exactly the kind of density I think you're looking for. And Tim Lyons has now contacted us directly to talk to us and meet with us about other things along the path that might hook up and help as well. So thank you, and we're certainly seeing a very direct and interested response. Tim and Brian are going to come meet with us as well about how to tie into the park here and to look at other opportunities. So
Great, thanks, Terry. Anyone else have any comments? Cheryl?
I have a question about the cost of the project, and, what are the costs for the project? How is that being funded? Who's going to be paying for the project to be, implemented? Is that just all by rate payers and, elevated?
Well, as a general matter, ratepayers do pay for the services from Vermont Gas Service, and so that issue is actually not part of the proceeding that we have before us right now. The proceeding we have before us is what's called a certificate proceeding, and that's where we look at the construction and whether or not to authorize construction of the pipeline. Subsequent to that, there will be rate proceedings, and that's when the issues of how any of those costs get recovered from ratepayers are before the board. I can tell you though that as part of the review in a certificate case under section 248, one of the things that's looked at is sort of the economics of the project, so that the department has hired consultants, and those are questions that we're currently asking. We've received in the petitions basic numbers, but we're probing those issues right now, and we're trying to learn more about costs and many other issues, safety, engineering, those kind of things. So it's something that we're actively looking at right now, but that unfortunately I can't provide any better information on this time.
I think a lot of people think that this is a cheaper fuel, but I just didn't know what the costs were gonna be to get us to that point. It sounds like I'm maybe premature in asking that question.
Well, I think it is a rate-based, I mean, they're making money by selling gas and making a profit and putting it into the distribution lines, and
I mean, the short answer, Cheryl, is that to design this system, Vermont Gas went to the Public Service Board seeking permission to set some dollars aside that were accumulated profits, if you will, and put them into the feasibility of this project. I can tell you that there were some folks in Chittenden County that didn't particularly care for that idea. I think they would have preferred to see a rate reduction as opposed to their money going into a design system to serve Addison and Rutland County. And but anyway, the Public Service Board authorized the creation of that fund, and that fund has been used to design this project. And they continue to see this, Vermont Gas continues to see this project as being economically feasible. And as Bill says, when I say we, anyone that connects to the system will be paying towards the capital of that project.
Kerry?
Is there ever a connection charge for an individual person, or is it just you will pay for the gas you get?
Well, and I have to confess I haven't reviewed Vermont Gas's rate structures specifically, but generally there are charges for the volume of gas you use, as well as what you can call a connection charge or demand charge, basically just to have the ability to take gas, to have the hookup.
But it's not like 5 people on the street, each of them are gonna have to pay $5,000 to get the pipe to come down.
It's our understanding from before that if you have a private driveway, for instance, with 3 houses, one person wants to join, 2 do not, you can buy into that connection so that they are willing to give you service, but you may have to put some upfront money or pay a backhoe to dig a hole for their pipe. So they're flexible where the economics don't work. But if the density is such that it works, then there really is very little cost. It's just a basic, I think, a hookup of some sort. Mike?
Bill, I'm gonna pick Mel's brain here a little bit, he's awful good with that. When did Vermont Gas come to the council meeting and did a presentation? It was actually viewed on a VCAM. I didn't know if we can remember the date or get the date out to the public. They might be able to go back to that broadcast and see that whole thing. So they talked about the rate structure. It was a rough one, I think. It wasn't specific, but they said if you went over 100 feet, then you had to pay for that, you know, and so they did cover a lot in that meeting, so.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Maybe check VCAM's files and.
That was January 29th.
Thank you.
Yep.
Excellent.
There was 2 Tims here.
Go VCAM.
There was Tim Lyons and Tim Vachereau.
Right, and he outlined that, and basically, Terry, if they treat the park, and I think that they should, but I don't own Vermont Gas, but if they treat the park just like any other street, residential street in town, they would run the mains through First, Second, Third Street, and I know in your instance, every home in there does not have, no home in there has a service line in excess of 100 feet, and therefore they would fall into that threshold. So there should be no so-called connection fee. There shouldn't be, all right? That's not to say that there wouldn't be some conversions of furnaces and the like, but if they treat the mobile home park, like I say, no differently than any other residential development, be it Maple Manor, Thomas Circle, Booth Woods, you know, there should be no connection fee.
Anybody else? Tim, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Adam's not here, is he?
He's on his way from Salisbury,
Okay.
so I'm expecting,
Why don't
he'll be
we,
expecting him.
Cheryl, do you want to speak briefly under citizens' comments while we're waiting for our next guest?
Actually, Lynn's here to join me too, because, yeah. I just wanted to tell everybody, wherever the cameras are, that there's going to be an electronic waste collection event this Saturday at the high school from 9 until 1. What this collection event is kind of a partnership between NRA, and that's the Northeast Resource Recovery Association, and Good Point Recycling. Once a year, they pick a place to hold a press event to let everybody know about the e-waste collection that is required in the state of Vermont. And what they do is they often partner up with a school because it helps them with fundraising as well. Where are my little talking points here? Hold on, I can do this better. One of the programs that they support is called the Vermont E-Cycle School Collection Event Fundraisers. And under the program, schools host a special electronics collection event in partnership with the NRA and Good Point. And this event will allow students and volunteers to assist with the event, help promote it to their peers and community, and in return, NRA and Good Point guarantee the school a minimum donation for their volunteer work, or a rate per pound for the electronics that they collect, whichever is higher. And basically, electronics are banned from the landfills in Vermont. So anything that you can plug in, anything that has a battery, cannot go into the landfill. And there's a lot of confusion about what do I do with this now. And there are collection points throughout the state, but this is one event that's coming to the community instead of the community having to go to a collection point. One of our collection points, so that you know, is the transfer station down in Middlebury, the Addison County Solid Waste Management District. We collect electronics. This is a program that, hold on, it's the wrong talking point. It's a contract for, the manufacturers are financing the collection for their own electronics. So most electronics are covered, computers, televisions, anything is connected with a computer, the printer, all the electronics that go with that, especially the keyboards. These things have a lot of hazardous materials in them, and we want to keep them out of the landfill. There are some electronics that are not covered, like maybe an old VCR, but for an event like this, they're taking everything for free. And the more that they collect, the more that they will give back to the schools. And for this event, we're teaming up with the Environmental Committee, which is promoting the composting at the school, and Project Grad. Project Grad is an alcohol and drug-free program that we are offering for the seniors. After they graduate, we're taking them on a big party so that they can have a party that is with their whole class, and it's safe, and it's like the one time that they can kind of see each other as a class. So Project Grad is partnering up with the Environmental Committee. We're all going to be there at the school this Saturday, and there'll be a couple of other fundraisers there. We're going to have a bottle drive, a coin drop. You can still buy your license plates that have the Vergennes logo on them.
We're gonna be doing some herb starts, selling herb starts, some baked goods. They'll be at 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock is the press event, which is when NRA and has invited some local politicians, legislators, representatives. they've invited the governor. They'll be basically talking about the electronic collection program. I know Diane Lamfer will be there for sure. I don't know about the other Republicans, but that's at 11 o'clock. The event is from 9 until 1. And it'll be at the school where we're used to dropping off our kids around that loop. We'll be setting up shop there and having some senior volunteers to help direct where the TVs go versus the stereos.
Kind of a
and-
drive-through.
Yeah.
Drive-through drop-off and, yeah.
Well, it makes it
Yeah.
easy. Yeah, good. Well, thank you. That's awesome. Hopefully we'll get a good turnout. Hopefully the Project Grad will get
It'll
some
be, I
funds.
think people can, get rid of all the old electronics that they were kind of wondering what to do with, and it also benefit the school, so it feels like a real win-win for everybody. And hopefully you can, some of you can come down. I don't know if you'll be able to speak, but it would be great to have any of you come down to the school this
Great.
Saturday.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good. Derek, do you want to be on the agenda right now? We're still waiting for Adam, and
Sure.
so you can, this is relative to Encore Development and the agreement for the solar array down at the Public Works and the septic plant, is that correct?
Yeah, and just as a little lead-in for the board, obviously the city council authorized me to sign a letter of intent back a few months ago, and I did that, and that's what allowed Encore to move to their next step of engineering a project. Let me just tell you that what I shared with you is, I'm gonna call it this crude aerial photo, all right? And don't take this personally, Derek, maybe you didn't author it, but anyway, it's a little crude. But obviously, the attempt was to show how a 150 kW facility could land on this site. Now, I will tell you that, and we've advised Encore about that this envisions the termination of this road and whatever, and that's not gonna happen. This does need to be reconfigured so that road remains, and they really can't put any arrays between the road and the lagoons because that area needs to be saved as it is for our access of the lagoons for cleaning. There could be some additional arrays still in front of the facility, but also the area up on the hill might have to be expanded a little bit. So this is where we're at this point. They have given me, they originally gave me a 36-page agreement. I felt it was ridiculous that this thing prompted a 36-page agreement over $4,120 a year in revenue, but anyway, they shrunk it down, not just by adjusting the font size, it's 26 pages. And I know the engineering, so what I'm wondering, Bill, is how we want to handle this, whether or not there's a potential little subgroup of the city council. If everybody wants to read a 26-page agreement about this, about how this all works to the people that are investing the money, that's really what it comes down to. We can talk about that, but maybe Derek, if you want to spend a few minutes just talking about where we're at and next steps.
Sure, I'd be glad to, and thanks so much for having us. Chad Farrell, my partner, sends his best, and he was unable to make it tonight, but a brief overview of the project is this is a 150 kilowatt solar electric generating array. To put that in perspective, it's approximately an acre to an acre and a half of fixed ground-mounted solar panels. These are not the trackers that have any moving parts. They're fixed, facing south. We had approached the city some months ago to identify areas where the town could utilize solar electricity as part of its electric supply. A few years ago when we first started doing this, we were not able to pass through savings in solar generation to the customers. It was more expensive to install these projects. However, the price for construction has come down. The price of electricity has continued to increase, which now allows us to have this discussion which is basically a public-private partnership where a private company develops, finances, builds, and operates the project and sells the electricity to the town at a discount. So it is direct economic savings in the order of approximately $4,000 per year. And as the price of electricity continues to escalate over the years, that savings would also escalate. It's basically a royalty or a cost, a savings sharing model. So the interests are truly aligned with the owner of the project. Also key to the discussion is the option, and nothing more than an option for the town or the city to purchase the facility after 7 years of successful operation. And these projects last for, the warranty on the panels is 25 years. There are some operating today that were built back in the early 80s. The technology is proven. It is very efficient. And so we see a 25 to 40 year asset that the town would have the option of purchasing after 7 years. So that's the arrangement in a nutshell. Again, a very low to no risk opportunity to the town for procuring some of its electricity from clean, renewable, local generation. And so I'm glad to address any questions in the contract. Typically with other towns that we've been working with in Vermont, we do try to work directly with either the town manager or a chair of the board or a group of the board that is interested and savvy enough to work through the document, because it can get complicated when we're talking about selling of net metered credits. This is not selling electricity, because under Vermont statute, we would have to be going to the Public Service Board and the rate base to sell electricity. We're not selling electricity. We're selling the opportunity to credit the town's meters with the production of the array. So basically offsetting consumption on the monthly utility bill.
Mel, what's the timing on this? When do we need this agreement to be approved?
They want to get this, it's going to get cloudy in November, Bill. So we actually want to potentially get this thing done in this season.
Yeah, that's right. We've got a number of other projects that we're working on in the state. There is a resource incentive to get it in the ground during the solar production months. Also some seasonal constraints trying to build the thing in the wintertime. We've got about basically a 2-month lead time on the permit. That's at the Public Service Board under a very similar process that the gentleman from the department mentioned, although it is expedited for a small solar project. And also the financing of the project is pending execution of this solar service agreement.
Also, Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, part of the reason why the economics of this work is the 6-cent solar adder that the Public Service Board has authorized, this extra 6 cents per kilowatt. I think it's 6 cents.
That's right.
And that adder is good for 10 years, as I understand it. And it's my understanding that there is a limit to the value of that adder. Point being is potentially, I don't want to say there's a race, okay, but the point is there is a limited, the Public Service Board authorized the adder for 10 years of a certain amount of kilowatt facilities, all right? So it's not an infinite number. So we're in the mix, all right? But the point I'm getting at is that if we delay for a while,
We may be out of the mix.
we may be out of the mix, as I understand it. All right? But I don't want folks to feel in a race. All right, the math is you know, because I don't deal with this every day, I decided to actually write a paragraph to Bill to explain how this thing works, because the way the mechanics work is, we're gonna get our bill from the wastewater treatment plant, just like we always did from Green Mountain Power. We're gonna be paying 14 cents per kilowatt, just like we always have. However, what will happen is that as this facility generates power, the value of that power is the wholesale rate of 14 cents plus the 6 cent solar adder equals 20.6 cents. We get 10% of that, whatever's generated, applied in the form of a credit against our bill. So our bill to Green Mountain Power has the credit, that bill is lower. However, we will cut a check to Encore representing, in essence, 90% of the generation, because that's how they're gonna pay for the capital, all right? So the point is that the quicker we get this up, the quicker the credit shows up on our bill, and we actually start accumulating a credit. I don't wanna say that we won't go without a bill at the wastewater treatment plant, because this facility, the 150 kW facility, will generate 200,000 kilowatts per year. Our wastewater treatment plant uses about 345,000 kilowatts, so it's not like it's gonna use it all up. But if we had a real sunny July, and we didn't have the high air on at the lagoons, there wouldn't be much of a bill there. But that's really the way that the cash flow works.
Okay.
And when you just do the math over the course of the year, you know, the 10% of the generation applied against the bill, if it generates 200,000, it equals $4,120 a year. And, you know, Derek and Encore, they always talk about rates going up, and the 4120 gets higher, and then put a smile on my face, because your bill's going up. Yeah, your credit's going up, but your bill's going up at the same time. So
Sure.
the minimum is really the 4120.
Do any board members have any questions? It sounds like maybe we should have a committee of 3 that may be willing to read this 26-page document. And then we can get back together at the next meeting with a recommendation. Anybody, I'm willing to do it. Mel, you can do it. Would you, ready? Okay, so anyone else want to do it?
Is it consumer-friendly readable, or is it attorney readable?
It's probably attorney readable.
But you can still read it if you're interested.
I'll read it.
Okay. So why don't, we'll get together, we'll have
So I'll
a
distribute
committee,
this to.
and then we can get together privately and discuss it, and then we can bring a recommendation to the board for the next meeting or 2, so we can move this along.
That'd be great.
Okay?
Any support we can provide, and I'm sure we'll be in contact with this,
Okay.
this subcommittee, we're glad to support that. I would kind of echo the timeliness of it, in that this net metering program does have a cap of 4% of the total peak demand in Vermont. We're rapidly approaching that as you see more and more of these solar projects pop up around the state.
Okay.
So as soon as that 4% cap is met, the program will close. It may be extended, but we just don't know.
Now, your application is into the board,
That's right.
right? Because they need to get a certificate of public good. It's not quite the same as Vermont Gas, but they need to get a certificate of public good. And I've given all of the addresses of all of the abutting property owners, so that's in. And so that's what the letter of intent allowed them to do, is really being our commitment to the project.
Mike, you had a question?
It is true that there is a 25-year guarantee on things. What the board needs to ask at some point is, where in the life cycles do they start losing their efficiency, and what is the curve?
Yeah, that's interesting, because I just read a study last week about the cost per installed kilowatt has gone from $8 to $4 in 5 years. And if that trend continues, obviously, you know, the cost is gonna get very, very low as technology increases, so. You wonder if it's gonna be contributing anything after 25 years, or even 15.
Your panels also, after a certain duration, start losing their max efficiency.
Yeah.
I could address that if I may briefly. The degradation factor on solar panels manufactured today is about 0.5% per year. And that's a linear warranty on the panels. So after 20 years, they're specified to be operating at 90% efficiency.
Other questions, Randy? Did you have one?
Yeah, I'd like to know what other towns are involved in projects with you?
Sure. So we're working with a number of municipalities, school systems, public institutions across the state. We are the sole renewable energy provider for the city of South Burlington. We're working, did a very similar contract with the town of Randolph, Vermont, working with the town of Hartford. We've done some of these, a project down in Middlebury supporting the Acorn Energy folks. That was a very similar scale project. If you ever get a chance to visit the police department in Middlebury, that's another 150 kilowatt system.
Good. Joe, did you have a question?
Well, the only question I have is, all we have to do, excuse me, once this contract is approved, then we're go. That's kind of the stage we're at.
That's correct.
Okay.
Anybody else? Derek, thank you.
Great, thank you all very much.
Thanks. Melanie, are you okay time-wise?
Oh, yeah.
You are? Okay. Adam, do you want to brief us on Addison County Regional Planning Commission?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for having me here. I'm Adam Lucci from the Addison County Regional Planning Commission. I'm not sure I've presented before this august body.
It's not August.
That is true. So what I really want to do is just talk to you about regional planning and our relationship with the city of Vergennes and some of the things that we can do for you, and most importantly, what are some of the things that you would like to see us doing. So I've got a relatively long agenda.
We have other things coming, so be as quick as you can.
I will. So what I will do, I think, is just really, I think I'll flip to some of the things that the Regional Planning Commission does. So I'm going to go past your plan. There's an outline of basically comments on your plan. You all can take a look at it. Your Planning Commission's seen it. Your plan comes up 2014, so sooner than you would think. That's there for them and for you. I guess I'd ask you to go to the page that says VAPTA on it. And really, it's just a good summary of some of the things that regional planning commissions do for cities, towns around the state. Starting with land use planning, so can help you with writing your plan, your zoning regulations. Education and training, if any of your boards, your planning commission, your zoning board of adjustment, your zoning administrator, whatever, want some trainings, want some access to planning information, we certainly have a lot of it. VAPTA, the Regional Planning Commission's just redid www.vpic.info, which is the Vermont Planning Information VPIC Center. A lot of good information on planning, on holding public meetings, etc. So if there are things of that nature that you or any of your boards are interested in, we'd certainly be interested in helping you with that. Energy planning, which we were just talking about a little bit. We've worked with towns on PACE. We've worked with towns on the 2013 Energy Challenge, Home Energy Challenge, as opposed to the Town Energy Challenge. We did a few municipal audits, so there have our fingers there. Technical assistance, so every now and again I talk with Mel about zoning questions, but I'm happy to do it with boards or other things. Geographic information systems is mapping. Probably a lot of the maps that you get come from the Regional Planning Commission. Kevin Beam is our GIS manager. He's great. He's also a great resource for other things. Transportation planning. Usually I get the city councils and select boards to look up on this one because they're that's what you guys are more in charge of as opposed to the planning commissions. Daryl actually just developed a website for you with basically all of the traffic counts, high accident locations, things within the city of Vergennes. So on my last page, when I specifically talk about things that we've done for you, Daryl Benoit, our transportation planner.
Daryl Benoit?
Daryl Benoit.
Benoit. There is a link to a website there, www.acrpc info transportation data. If you go there and click on Vergennes, you'll basically see a traffic database for the city, where you can see, wherever there's been a traffic count, you'll see that. High accident locations, you'll see that. Maybe a few other things, but let's see. Emergency management is another one of the services that we provide. So we work with your fire departments. Tim Boughton on our staff helps you with your basic emergency operations plans, works with your local responders.
Adam, can I ask a quick question? Does
Yeah.
those traffic also include pedestrian traffic accidents, or is it just vehicle traffic?
If we've got some pedestrian database or bicycle database, if we've taken counts, it would include them. And it's very possible that we have taken counts in the city of Vergennes. I mean, I know we just supervised the Middlebury College. Daryl and Kevin Beam were basically working with the college students that just looked at your bicycle and walking use and kind of safety of crosswalks report, which I thought was a great report. I thought they did a really nice job.
They actually presented it to a group of people here, and it was well attended. It was good.
They had some very concrete suggestions for you to make improvements. Let's see, the last page that I'm giving you is things that we've done specifically for Vergennes, for the city of Vergennes. So I gave you I just gave you the big picture, the VAPTA picture. These are the things that the Addison County Regional Planning Commission has done with the city of Vergennes within the last year or so. So I asked each one of my staff members, what have you been doing? There's a fair amount of transportation planning. We talked a little bit about that. Draft emergency operations plan. Water quality monitoring, forest cover mapping for the city. So a lot of good things, a lot of different things. My question to you is, now that you know a little bit about what we do, and presumably some of you knew more already, what are the things that you would like to see us doing for the city of Vergennes?
Well, you've been at regional planning for how many years?
About 12.
12.
Yeah.
How long's Kevin been there?
Probably about 16 or 17 years before I got there, and Tim has been there about that amount of time too.
Yeah, so we've gone through a lot of different issues with you, with Kevin, with regional planning. Mel left municipal government, came back. I mean, I think at this point, unless you feel otherwise, that the relationship between us and the commission is probably pretty healthy and pretty good. Is that true in your case? Do you think that's true?
I hope that's true. I think I have a good working relationship with Mel, and I know we've talked with Joe about some transportation issues and things. So the answer is yes. Would love to see you guys get a couple of delegates on the regional planning commission, so we could make sure that they communicated back to you, and make sure you had other channels of information.
I was a delegate in 1984.
Well, there's still room.
You were too. I mean, there's so much that you have to offer, but I think it's great that you bring it to our attention, and I think that if the lines of communication are open, then obviously, I wouldn't hesitate to call you if we needed your expertise, or even to, get your take on something, so.
Great, good.
I mean, do you have any?
Yeah, I mean,
questions,
one of
Mel,
the thing that has, and I've explained to Adam, it's been frustrating. First off, let me tell you that Greg Edwards, the city council annually has appointed Greg to serve on the TAC, the Addison County TAC Transportation Advisory Committee. So I can tell you, we are well represented on that organization. However, we have not been able to find anyone to serve as representatives on the board. And obviously, there is an executive board as well down there, and so if you're on the board, you could also be an executive on the executive board. We just, I'm I'm not any good at selling raffle tickets. So I just haven't been able to sell that, and it's, you know, it's unfortunate, really, that, you know, that we aren't able to find, you know, someone from a planning commission or from the city council, or, you know, somebody that's connected. You know, I think that that's what's important. That
Well, maybe we can,
whoever
maybe we
have, I
can
know
work
you-
on that.
I mean, you served, Rennie, when you were city manager. I served as an alternate during my first 17 years, but I have an agreement with my wife. Actually, I have an agreement with you, Mike, and I, did you transfer that agreement to Bill?
No,
Okay.
I know nothing about it. What is it?
Actually,
I don't release you from that.
yeah, I have an agreement, actually, my wife had an agreement with Mike, and I need to have, that Mike would agree to not allow me to raise my hand to volunteer to another board, all right? But anyway, I just wanna
Lori
let
has
you know.
never mentioned that agreement to me at all, so she's gonna
Well,
have
yeah,
to step up to the
she'll-
plate, otherwise you're gonna get
You'll
appointed
get an
to
email
something.
tomorrow about that, just as a reminder.
I have a question.
Yeah, Allison?
On the board, it's not what it's for, but is a representative of this organization part of our May 22nd community forum?
Greg is gonna be here, and Shannon Haggett, who's the head of the DRB?
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission, is gonna be sharing the part that deals with pedestrian safety and downtown safety and so on. So and Greg is gonna be doing the bicycle section, so I should send that to you tomorrow. We're having a forum next Wednesday that's dealing with 4 different components, at the Opera House. You know, one is pedestrian safety, one is bicycle, assets and marketing, one is rejuvenation of park areas, and the other is a toddler park plan that is, you know, kind of starting up. And so it might be interesting, but I'll send you an outline. You're more than welcome. It's a public event from 7 to 9 next Wednesday.
Great.
Yeah.
I will totally, I've got a meeting myself that night already,
Yeah, well,
but I can talk to Daryl
Daryl,
about,
Yeah,
you know, the transportation
but
component.
yeah, exactly, because I think,
Hopefully you'll have looked at that Middlebury College study, because
Yeah.
I really think it had a lot of interesting things.
that's really gonna be the basis or a very important component of 2 of those groups, because we really thought it had a lot of good stuff in it, so.
Great.
Yep, good.
Okay.
Any questions of Adam? Thank you. I mean, it's great. And you know, the nice thing is that we know who you are and we know where to find you.
Great, well, thank
Yeah.
you for the opportunity to be here tonight, and do pick up the phone and give us a call if you need anything. And I'll help you sell some raffle tickets.
Okay, Melanie, how are you? You're on the agenda. Let me just introduce this first, and then you can, we had the folks from VCAT here 2 weeks ago, the kids, and they had a presentation about creating a non-smoking areas at City Park and with a pool recreation area. Joe and Mel and I met with 2 students of VCAT and Jay Stetzel last week, just to kind of talk about the process and to discuss what our thoughts were, to get their take on things. And Mel and I had done a little bit of research in the meantime relative to, you know, how this may play out. It really comes down to, tonight was supposed to talk about just, do we want to pursue this as potentially a policy, which is something that's not enforceable, but might deal more with identifying an area where we don't want smoking to happen and have peer pressure be the mechanism to have people not smoke, or an ordinance which, you know, has enforcement and has fines and so on and so forth. In talking with the group, I think that they would like either, at least move in the right direction. We could start with one and move to another. But then I got an email from Melanie, who's been working with those kids, and she actually has some information in terms of policies versus ordinances that she wanted to share with us. There are a lot of resources out there. So I think tonight we would like to hear what you have to say about the resources. We can maybe see if we can decide which road to take, and then we can actually get a group together to write the policy or the ordinance, so.
Yeah, so, do you want me to stand or?
Sure, it doesn't matter if you're on camera there, so that's okay.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Melanie Clark. I work for the Open Door Clinic out of Middlebury. I coordinate Addison County's tobacco part of the combined prevention grant that's actually funded through the Boys and Girls Club. And I've worked on tobacco prevention and control initiatives for 13 years now. And when this came up at Vergennes, I need to be a little bit careful because I do receive state funding, so I can't lobby. So I was kind of staying behind the scenes. I knew the kids wanted to do it, and I can definitely offer resources and support. And then that's the same thing I sent Bill and Mel an email just saying, I'm here as a resource, I can offer some support, I can help you look at options in terms of what you might like to do or might want to consider as you go down this road of, you know, whether you want a smoke-free park, whether you want an ordinance, whether you want a policy. So I'm pretty much here just to act as a support person to you. But if you would like some input as far as policy versus ordinance, I would definitely be willing to offer that to you. Again, unless you ask, I technically can't give you any opinions on it. But I can definitely tell you benefits of both. There is the policy route, as you know, which doesn't typically have any enforcement behind it. Which the benefits of that are, it's usually quicker. You don't need to go through a long ordinance process. It's usually, because it's more of like a voluntary thing, I think there's probably less commitment felt by board members as far as is this something they're going to want versus not going to want. This is just a volunteer thing. We'd like you not to do this. And another benefit of a policy would be there isn't somebody that necessarily has to enforce that. So those are the benefits of going the policy route versus an ordinance route. The benefits of an ordinance, of course, are if you really want this to be followed, you necessarily need to have an ordinance. I know, for example, the state of Vermont has a policy that you can't smoke on school property. However, there's no enforcement language with that. So Mount Abe at this point is having a situation where there are 18-year-olds smoking on school property, but they can't do anything about it because there's no enforcement language within that. So one thing to consider is if you, as a city council, really want this to be followed, then you might want to go the ordinance route. So it might be instances where you don't really care that much down at the falls or if there's nobody else in the park, but if you're talking about the swimming pool where you have a swim team event going and there's hundreds of people there, do you really want to be able to allow somebody to smoke at that event? Because if the answer is no, then there needs to be some sort of enforcement language within what you're doing to prevent that from happening. Because essentially, you could go and tell them, this is a policy, we don't like smoking here, but unless there's any teeth behind that, somebody could still sit there and smoke at that swim meet event where there's kids everywhere around that pool. So that's definitely a benefit of an ordinance. Another benefit is it's essentially you're taking a stance one way or the other. We're doing this because we really want to support public health. And as the city council, we think that supporting public health is important, and we're going to do this because it's the right thing to do. So it's another way where you can take a stance one way or the other. Something that you want as a voluntary action versus something that you really want to see happen. And I think that's something that you should consider as a council. Is this something that you would like to see happen, or is this something that you really want to see happen? And I think typically these type of things are self-enforcing, as you've heard. If there's signs up, normally community members will say, you know, there's no smoking here, do you see the sign? And people will honor those requests. You do every once in a while have a person who will not honor those requests and they'll smoke anyway. We worked with the Addison County Fair and Field Days 4 or so years ago. We surveyed fairgoers, about 1,300 fairgoers. They were in support of it. I think it was around a 70% fairgoer rate that were in support of designated smoking areas. For the most part, everybody uses them. Every once in a while you see somebody that isn't using them, but there's no enforcement around that. So you can't necessarily ask them to go to a designated smoking area. So typically self-enforcement is the way these things happen. So if you wanted to do just the policy route, probably a large portion of the people would just honor that request and do it anyway. It's just a slim couple people that might want to smoke anyway and feel like it's their right and they want to be able to do it, that you might think will never come up, but as we see at Mount Aid, wasn't a problem in the past, but now it is a problem and there's no way to address this issue. So
Interesting.
it's something where you could definitely go a policy route, and then if you see that it becomes an issue and people aren't honoring the request, then you could move toward an ordinance. But if it's something that you really want to see happen and you do want to be able to enforce, then I would definitely put the time and energy into making an ordinance now, so that you don't need to discuss it later on if it becomes a problem.
You indicated, I think, in an email to me that you had some examples or templates of ordinances and policies.
Yeah,
Can you forward those to
and
me? Just
I can forward them to you. I have copies tonight.
Oh, okay.
If you do decide to do a ordinance, the state of Vermont actually has a contract with the Center for Public Health and Tobacco Policy at New England Law in Boston, and they have created a model ordinance for towns that they'd like to use. So if you want to take that ordinance, it's already pre-made. It has actual spots where you can just insert your own data and information. You can take bits and pieces out that are or aren't, I guess, something that you would or wouldn't need. And because of the relationship that our coalition has with the Vermont Department of Health, if you do need to tweak this a little bit, they're willing to actually work with the city for free to help tweak the policy to meet the specific needs of the city. So if an ordinance is the way you want to go, there doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of time commitment put into creating one. There's already one there that you could look at and tweak. There's one specific for Vermont. I also have one that's specific for New York. And I'm going to include this one as well because the New York one, they actually have a sidebar to the ordinance, and it actually tells you why they incorporated certain things within the ordinance or what you might want to consider. So if you are interested in just doing this on your own, there's that nice little sidebar that talks about you might want to do this. If this isn't relevant to you, then you don't need to do that. And it talks about why there is specific language in there and how it can cover you legally and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So it's very helpful, and if it's something that you'd like to do, you can definitely contact me. I can contact, the woman's name is Whitney Dobbs from New England Law in Boston. She's going on maternity leave, I think as of June 4th. Her baby's supposed to come. We all know how that works out. But in her absence, another lawyer will be available to help out if the city does move forward. Also, if you do, I have a grant that goes until June 30th, and I do have about $700 that I could allocate towards signs. After that point, the tobacco funding and everything is being moved over to the Boys and Girls Club. So presumably they would also have money that they could offer for you if you don't have anything up and running by the end of June. But that's something you would have to talk to Mike Reeder about.
Okay.
But I don't imagine that that would be a problem. So I don't want any pressure there to be, let's get it done so that we can save the $700 for signs. Because it's definitely a possibility that Mike could get you some anyway.
great. Well, that's so we'll get that information from you.
Yeah.
Also in your packet, Mel included an ordinance from St. Albans and a policy from Ludlow. I also found online there was some news about Bennington. There was some news about Rutland and some news about Springfield, which we can certainly copy and share with you. I guess I'd like to know what you would like to do as a board. Rennie?
Well, my tendency is towards going with a policy first. And I do think policies to a certain degree are enforceable. They're enforceable in a different way. I mean, we have use of city property kinds of policies now. And I think that it's enforceable in the way that we may not be able to write a citation to somebody violating it, but we can remove them from the property. If they really insist. So I think that if we tried that, one, you can do it a lot faster to put in a policy and see how it works. And maybe we could take advantage of some of that money because we would need signs and we probably would need some place to put your butt. So that somebody can extinguish it before they get into the parks and that sort of thing. That's just my opinion. ordinances take a little bit longer.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
a process for
yeah.
that, so.
Well, what do you think?
I know I'm thinking about the pool area mostly, because my daughter's gonna be going there this summer, and I know a lot of pregnant ladies go with their kids and stuff, and I'd hate to see the smoking start there. So I would go with the policy thing, cause it's enforceable immediately, and, it would be in place for the start of the pool, so.
I think in terms of secondhand smoke, I mean, I would agree that the concentration of people and kids and so on is such that's probably a priority spot. It's funny reading some of this, even some of these, they're town-wide ordinances, you know, it's like, I don't see us doing this, you know, down by the river where the guys are fishing, because they aren't really bothering anybody.
But maybe during
Lynn?
the fishing derby, it might be an issue.
Well, that's a good point, yeah. Lynn, what do you think?
I would probably think a policy would be the best way to at least start this. But I think if children are present, that's maybe when it becomes more enforceable.
Mm.
And the fishing derby is a big thing. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
there's hundreds of
there.
kids down there,
Yeah.
yeah, for that weekend.
So, I mean, you can't just say not down to the river, but.
Well, we could certainly encourage no smoking. You could put some temporary signs down there. You're not gonna stop anybody, and it's not enforceable, but at least you're voicing your opinion as a municipal body that you'd rather not smoke down there.
But it could
so.
be the case, Lynn, that the policy could be written to cover events like the fishing derby, so
Yeah.
that it's no smoking during that event. You know, obviously, you know, I think the park from a policy, you know, whether or not it's announced, at the start, just to, you know, on Memorial Day, if there's an announcement to remind people, I mean, I think that people will comply. Obviously, if the city council adopts a policy that you can't smoke at this pool, you know, the director of the pool, the employees of the pool, it would be their job to, in essence, enforce that. And as Rennie said, they won't issue tickets, but, you know, if that's the policy of the board, and if somebody doesn't comply, I'm pretty sure George Merkel will take care of that.
Keto will.
The one, what I'm real curious to hear more about the Mount Abe thing, because I just wanna hear about it, because the park and the pool, I think a policy will absolutely work there. However, the skate park or other school lands, the playground behind, you can tell I was brought up in Vergennes, used to smoke. Anyway, those, you don't have a pool director, you don't have a microphone announcing that. So that's potentially problematic, because you don't have any enforcement, what you're talking about. And so I'm curious about how, I wanna watch this Mount Abraham thing. I'm not sure who's writing the ordinance, who's enforcing it. I'd like to,
They're not doing anything at this point.
Okay.
It's part of the problem. Chief Gibbs and the school, obviously underage people can't smoke, but if you have people that are 18, they can smoke. And right now, like I said, Chief Gibbs is kind of like, my hands are tied, because I can't do a whole lot about it, because there is a state law, but there's no enforcement language.
Right.
So again, you could come into the same situation where it's a policy, but if there's not any specific enforcement language within there, then your hands are tied, and you probably couldn't actually remove somebody from the pool if there's not any enforcement language.
As far as the skate park, that's what I'm concerned about, is that you can adopt a policy, all right, but there's no supervision in that area. And let's say that, you know, there's kids smoking down there, and then there's other kids that really don't like it, and the parent comes to City Hall and say, listen, I'd like to have my kid go to the skate park, but, you know, there's kids down there smoking, I don't. You know, I don't wanna jump the gun, but I wanna bring up the fact that we may be hearing from them. And when we hear from them, we're gonna have to try to figure that out.
But a policy might be a good idea while you're working on an ordinance.
Right.
It could be an interim step. Joe, what do you think?
Well, I think a lot of it's already been covered. I certainly agree with the consensus about a policy. As we discussed at the meeting, policy could include, like Mel said, city-sanctioned events such as the fishing derby, Memorial Day Parade, Vergennes Day, et cetera. We could certainly write into the policy that any city-sanctioned event smoking would be prohibited. So it'd be pretty easy to do.
And I think we can turn it around, Bill, and have this thing potentially. I mean, if we use Ludlow, I mean, I'm happy to see what else you got there in the form of policies. They don't get much shorter than Ludlow did there.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
so,
But it's a start, you know, that's
yeah,
the thing.
and I think that we could, if the council, by consensus feels that that's the direction, I mean, I think that.
That can
we
be drafted
we can
fairly
have that,
easily
Can put it on the
and-
agenda
yeah.
the next,
Do we need a
and
motion to,
Well, Randy, do you have any, I haven't asked you yet. What do you think?
Save the last, best for last, huh?
Yeah.
I agree, I think we should do a policy, that's a good starting step. And when we write it, we just have to make sure there's an enforcement, a penalty section to it.
there won't be in a policy.
That's the problem. There can't be
There can't be
a financial, there can't be really any enforceable
Yeah,
penalty.
but I think, you know, it's just like some of the other policies we have for use in the park and so on. If someone is not doing something that they're supposed to be doing, in the park, we can remove them. You can, I mean, the police,
Right here, 'cause it says
they can't arrest them, but they can remove them.
What do
This
you
is
do if
appropriate
beer-
signage,
What if there was a beer bottle, you know?
well, that's, I mean,
Is that a policy or an ordinance?
we have an ordinance about alcohol, so.
And I was gonna say a couple things first. The town of Middlebury, they incorporated within their public use permit that there was no smoking at events. They didn't wanna do a blanket policy for everywhere, but as a first step, they knew that they definitely didn't want it at public events, so they just incorporated that within their public use permit.
I looked for that policy and I couldn't find it, and that's why.
Yes, it's
Okay.
just within the public use permits there.
Okay.
And another thing to consider when you do go about this is a couple years back when I talked to the city of Burlington, they didn't do a blanket ordinance. They did 50 feet from here, this park, not this park. And it was actually very confusing to everybody. And the police were actually ticketing people, this is their police, in the park right in downtown Burlington, which technically people could smoke at, because even amongst the police, there was some confusion as far as what was and wasn't smoke-free.
Wow.
So as you do move forward, it might be at least, a part of your consideration is how are we gonna make this easy for people to be able to distinguish what is and isn't smoke-free? Is this during this time? Am I within 50 feet of a play structure, or am I within 50 feet of a beach? So in some instances, when I talked to the city council member in Burlington, she had said it almost would have been easier to just do a blanket policy, because half the people were assuming it covered everything anyway, and the other half were so confused they just didn't even know.
Yeah.
So when you do move forward, that's something to consider, and you could, as you said, start with a policy as you're working on an ordinance if you think that's gonna take longer, because you're definitely moving into peak summer recreation period, and it would be too bad if you missed out on no smoking at the park for Memorial Day Parade or some other place because you're working on an ordinance. So you could do a policy and work on an ordinance, but I guess ultimately it comes down to yes or no. Do you really want to be able to allow it in any particular place? And if the answer is no, then an ordinance might be the way to go.
Joe, do you have a question?
no, I just a comment that I worry that if we do write an ordinance, that our police department has enough to do already, and, you know, I just wonder how much enforcement there would really be.
And that's something we should probably run by the chief too.
And the chief has supported this. He said he would definitely support it. He was asked a while back, and he could definitely ask again. But another thing, a couple years back, when I was doing this research for Middlebury, I did call all of the police departments in the towns that had already passed it, and all of them had said it was no undue burden to be able to do this. In many instances, it was, and I actually called other states, and out in California, they said we appreciated it because it gave us a reason to go up and approach large groups of people. It was another way we could go up to them and say, you know, there's no smoking here, which could also get rid of some other habits that they were doing there that they didn't want going on. So to some instances, the police actually did appreciate an ordinance.
Right here in the Ludlow policy, it says the appropriate signage will be displayed regarding smoking and tobacco policy, and violators absent corrective action will be asked to leave the premises. Isn't that an enforcement?
It is, it's just not a ticket, but yeah, that's what Rennie's saying, it is.
It's not with handcuffs on, but
No,
you're
but
asked
it's
to leave the
still-
premises.
It's still, if
That
they
isn't-
refuse to
that's
comply,
Yeah.
we can tell them to vamos.
Yep.
I guess it seems like the consensus is at least start with a policy, and why don't we go back, Mel and maybe Joe and I, since we kind of, we can draft something, get it to the council ahead of the next meeting so you can read it. Look at any, if you want other copies of things, we can furnish them to you, but it sounds like we're gonna go down that route initially anyway.
So Melanie, if you have any other policies, don't bombard me here.
No.
But
I
anyway,
think I had already given Jay, because Jay had asked, I forwarded him all of the policies for Vermont.
yep.
I do have the model
He did
policies.
send 6 of them to us, but I
Yeah.
think that Ludlow, the others seem to be ordinances, it's not a big deal. I
Yeah.
just was
Yeah, most of them are ordinances.
Yeah.
I think people, and I don't think there's actually a town that actually brought it to vote. It was just the city council
Yep.
that decided to do it. And
Yes.
most of them did go the ordinance route. So
Yep.
I'm not sure that there's a lot of policies, but I can look into it.
Springfield was leaning towards a policy. There was a newspaper article I found there. Rutland was an ordinance, I think.
And the Center for Public Health and Tobacco Policy might definitely have more policies, examples for New York, because they do all of New York State. So
Okay.
we could just take New York's and then
Good.
we could take a look at those. So I can look at policies
Okay.
for you.
Well, thank you for coming, Melanie. You
Yeah.
obviously gave us all more information than Mel and I had here, so that was really helpful.
No problem. And if
Good.
you ever need any more support or information or any insight as to what has worked or hasn't worked in any of the other towns, I definitely been following it. So you can just call me at any point and
Great,
let
awesome.
you know.
Thank you.
May I ask a quick follow-up question?
Yeah,
Obviously, I know there's been a lot of talk about the pool, there's been a lot of talk about city-sanctioned events. I don't hear anything clear one way or the other, maybe I missed it, about the park itself. What are the-
well, I think that the VCAT wanted the park, the defined square park and the pool area.
Right.
I think we are definitely looking at those two for the policy and potentially city-sanctioned events that
Okay,
would be
I didn't
listed.
hear it clearly.
Is that what we
Yeah.
agree on, basically? Okay,
Thanks, I just wanted to be clear on that.
Yep.
Thank you.
okay. Thanks, Melanie.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, farmer's market. Mel,
Joan.
farmer's market.
Well, Joan schedules you all right? Joan, you okay? Joan,
She's had a long day.
this is something that the council has acted on annually. The farmer's market obviously schedules their use of the park every year. However, because the vendors are for profit, the policy, they are not allowed, Joan is not authorized to schedule that use. It requires city council approval. So there's a memo in your packet that outlines their schedule. So if the city council were to approve their request, which are a certain number of Thursdays starting June something until such and such, if there's city council that will authorize that, Joan would reserve the park accordingly.
I make said motion.
I will second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on the farmer's market? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you. Mel, swimming pool rates.
The swimming pool rates, I put a memo together. It's just been our practice, if you will, to have the city council set the rates annually. One of the things that we did this year, it was actually acted on last year or the year before, relative to the ability of someone to convert their military pass into equal value towards lessons. So that's that change. The other change deals with the way that we handle the Mary Hogan Recreation Program. First off, New Haven, there is not gonna be according to Ann Gleason of Mary Johnson, I didn't mean Hogan, Mary Johnson Summer Rec Program, there is not going to be a New Haven program, and so that's been removed. And the Vergennes program, this is actually how we've been doing it for a year, and I wanted to document that in the policy, that the summer rec program, it's actually done, and they make a deposit to us. They send us a check. They overpaid us by $750 last year, just so everybody knows. So anyway, they've already made their deposit. We got it. And what will happen is the Vergennes program, their kids go to the pool. Some have passes, and when they show up, the staff at the pool log them in. And then at the end of the year, we settle up with Mary Hogan. So that's kind of an exception. Any exceptions to the rule, you know, Joan and I, we go by this policy. It's real structured.
Are the rates
You know,
the same?
Rates are the same, yep.
Okay,
So do you need a motion and a,
What I would
Yep.
seek is a motion for the council to adopt this as the rates for the 2013 season.
make said motion?
Second.
second, Lowell. Any discussion on the rates for 2013 at the pool? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, excellent. Business is done. City manager's report. Mel, you're up.
Oh, I've already, budget report, you have, I know Bill's giving me 90 seconds. Grievance meeting, just so folks know, grievance is scheduled for May 29th at 5:30. Anybody who wishes to file an appeal of their assessment have to do so in writing and file that with Joan Devine by 5:30 on May 29th. Vermont gas systems, we've already talked about, and I don't have any other topics of interest.
And I don't have a mayor's report because I was gonna talk about VCAT, but then it turned into an agenda item, so. Joe?
Question about, just on the budget, Mel.
Sure.
You mentioned in the past that Jim likes to use up his 100% of his budget, and he's got like 6 weeks to use up about 40-some-odd thousand. Do you know if
Jim does? No.
Larrow? Yeah.
Well, some of that's winter stuff, but he hasn't used his sidewalk money from last year yet, which I think
I
he
know,
probably would like to
yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So there's some
a lot
paving
of,
that can be done.
Surveyors around town, but just curious what those people.
Well, natural gas, Vermont Natural Gas is more than likely, that's what's
I was
going
curious
on,
too
is
about
the
that.
line.
I just go and ask.
Yes.
What are you
But-
doing
but-
on our front lawn?
But Joel, one thing, Joey, the salt, we didn't use very much money in salt, and we will not be using that up, before the end of the year. But anyway, obviously.
And we're not using overtime up either,
No?
not winter overtime, so.
So one of the things I'm just, you know, on the backside, sorry, on the backside here, for the, on the bottom where it says Vergennes Partnership, that's your report, is that the Vergennes Partnership will be coming here on May.
Coming here at the
here.
next meeting for
Yeah,
their
that's the-
quarterly report.
Yep.
So
And on the
that's,
back where it says review FY14 budget, I will, I have spoke to all of the department heads and their budgets. I've already got Jim's for next year. I don't have George's. I talked to Jim Brewer today. Those will be coming to me on Monday, the 20th.
so
and
we
you'll
might have
get-
it preliminary
You'll
at
get,
some
you'll
point.
get, oh yeah, it'll
next
go out
couple
in the
weeks.
agenda packet,
Good.
on, whatever the Friday is, before the next meeting.
Okay.
And obviously with, you know, we will not have, obviously, a finalized grand list, by then, but, you know, we'll know what is pending, so.
Okay.
That's the schedule.
Any other comments?
Belated happy birthday to the mayor, his birthday was on Sunday.
Thanks, Mike.
Birthday.
Happy birthday, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, it turns out that Jason Farrell's birthday is my birthday, and
Yeah.
the guy that makes the Adirondack chairs, Matt Chabot, is May 12th
no
too.
kidding.
Yeah.
I'll be
Anybody
there.
else got a
Huh.
birthday May 12th?
Huh.
Great, I'll entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, you can't.
Second.
Oh,
I'll
all
take the
right.
second. I don't care.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thanks. He
Lowell's
beat you
quick.
to it.
Lowell's
You're-
quick.